Welcome back. In lecture 5, we're going to think all about planning, structure and timing. So preparing ourselves in the best possible way for writing the letter response to task 1. So in other words, we're laying the foundations to achieve task 1's success. So let's first of all think about planning our letter. Now, although planning is important in task 1 as it can save you time in the long run and should actually help you to make sure you address all of the task requirements, I don't recommend spending much time on this. 2 minutes, although that doesn't sound much time, 2 minutes should be enough, perhaps a little longer for those who write a bit slowly or think of ideas a little bit more slowly. As in task 2, the first thing to do is to underline or highlight any keywords in the task. So let's have a look at an example. You and some friends ate a meal at a restaurant to celebrate a special occasion, and you were very pleased with the food and the service. Write a letter to the restaurant manager. Give details of your visit to the restaurant. Explain the reason for the celebration. Say what was good about the food and the service. So what do you think are the key words in this task? What words should we underline or highlight? I will now show you what I think we should underline. I've underlined you, some friends, meal, restaurant, celebrate a special occasion, very pleased, food, the service. But also the restaurant manager, and details of your visit, explain the reason, what was good about the food, and for some reason I've underlined this in strange order, but also service, what was good, and celebration. So explain the reason for the celebration, what was good about the food and the service. All of those things are important to underline, because if you miss any of these details out, if you miss any of these elements, you do risk losing marks for task achievement. Let's have a look at why that would be. So if you don't underline these keywords, you are at risk of talking about most of the task elements, but not all of them. So examples of letters which would lose marks for this reason in terms of task achievement: if you discussed your experience but you didn't mention your friends, or if you mentioned your friends but you didn't discuss yourself. Describing where you ate but not mentioning it was a restaurant. It's an important part of the task to mention it was a restaurant. If you don't mention the restaurant, it may come across as a cafe or a pub or something else. Explaining it was a special occasion but not mentioning what type of special occasion it was. Again, it's an important element of the task. Describing what was good about the food but not what was good about the service, and vice versa. If you only talk about one of these elements, then you're going to lose marks too. So very important that we underline those keywords just to make sure that we are on track. You can always glance back at those keywords and just think to yourself, have I talked about that? Have I talked about that? Have I talked about that? If it's yes to all of those, then you're on the right track. Let's think about the process of planning your letter. So once we've underlined these keywords, which shouldn't take very long at all, we can assess whether the letter should be formal, informal, or semi-formal. And we can use this as the title of our plan. We'll look at that in a moment. If you like, you can also include the purpose of the letter, as this may help to orient your mind towards appropriate ideas and vocabulary. So this certainly seems like a praise letter. The plan itself can be structured in the same way as the letter itself. This is really, really simple. Just plan one paragraph for each bullet point. Really, really simple. We'll look again in a moment. We will look at what that looks like. For each paragraph plan, try to offer 2 ideas. This will prevent you from failing to reach the minimum word count if you only thought of one idea, and creating an imbalanced letter if one of your paragraphs is very long with 2 or 3 ideas, and one paragraph is very short with just 1 idea. So try to offer 2 ideas for each paragraph plan. Let's have a look at an example. So we're going to keep with the same task about the restaurant and that we had a very good time there. So our plan, as I say, we want to identify what kind of letter it is. First of all, it's a formal letter. We are writing to a manager of a restaurant. So we use that as the title of our plan. Now you may actually see this as a semi-formal letter because you'd be writing in a very happy way. Maybe you know the manager kind of well, or maybe you're just overwhelmed with how happy you are that some informal language might come across. That's also okay. Just make sure that it's not informal. So either formal or semi-formal. The purpose, praise, gratitude, that's the purpose that we want to get across to the manager. Now, paragraph 2. We look at the first bullet point for our ideas. Give details of your visit to the restaurant. 2 ideas then. Monday night, and it was our first time there. Next paragraph, explain the reason for the celebration. Sister's birthday, she loves Italian food. Okay, 2 ideas. Paragraph 4, say what was good about the food and the service. So first of all, the food, it was delicious, authentic, a taste of Italy. So we're just putting some expressions there that we can turn into a sentence later. And the service, there was a conscientious waiter. So this can be quite a good like an opportunity to write down any useful adjectives that you think will help to improve your mark later, and then to put them into the paragraph at an appropriate time. It's a very, very simple plan. 2 ideas per paragraph plan, along with the letter type and the purpose of the letter. Now there's something missing here, as you might have noticed. What happened to paragraph 1? Okay, now paragraph 1 is going to be a very simple sentence just explaining the purpose of the letter. We don't need to plan this because we know what the purpose of the letter is. You can see it right there. It's praise and gratitude, and it should just come quite naturally to you, that purpose sentence. You shouldn't need to waste time on planning that sentence. Now, how about timing? You have 20 minutes. They recommend you take 20 minutes for task 1 so that you can have 40 minutes for task 2. As mentioned earlier, you should try to spend no more than 2 minutes on planning your letter. A good plan should actually save you time over the course of your response because you won't be constantly having to think of ideas. All of your ideas will be written out for you. Now, following this plan, you should aim to spend no more than 5 minutes per paragraph. Considering you should be writing no more than 3 paragraphs plus a purpose sentence, which we'll look at later, this should leave you with about 3 minutes to check your work. And that can be a good time to find things like article errors, punctuation errors, maybe subject-verb agreement errors, sort of the areas that we'll look at in the grammar section and common grammatical errors. And remember, you must write at least 150 words, not including your name at the end. If you don't, you will lose marks. As such, aim for 50 words per paragraph. If you aim for 50 words per main paragraph, and then you write your purpose sentence as well, I'm not including that here, and then you have your salutation at the end, your kind regards or speak to you soon, you should have no problem reaching that minimum word count. In general, you should maybe aim for about 175 altogether, but as we looked at in the previous lecture, sometimes that can go a bit over, and that's okay, but just make sure that it is not too short, as you will lose marks for not addressing all of the task requirements. A good trick though, in terms of the word count and not wasting your time, don't count all of your words. This takes too much time. This goes for task 2 as well, which is actually even longer, so even more important. So instead of counting all of your words, when you're practicing, count how many words you usually write per line. Then, when it comes to the exam, instead of counting every word, you can just count the lines. There are going to be far fewer lines than there are words. You then just multiply the number of lines by the figure that you get for your average words per line. If the paper that you write on in the exam is different, then you can maybe just take the first 2 lines that you write and just work out the average of those 2 lines and then multiply that figure by the number of lines that you have. However, only do this when you are worried that you haven't reached the word count. 150 words isn't very many, so most of the time you'll be plenty over, and it will be clear that you are plenty over, so you shouldn't need to waste time counting words. It's only if you feel like your letter is very short and you can't think of any more ideas that you should go back and try to count how many words there are using this technique. Okay, so that was planning, structure and timing, and in the next lecture we're going to look at that all-important question of tone.